Middle school is a time of great change, and you may be asking yourself, what happened to my baby? Don't worry, your baby's still in there, but there are lots of changes that you need to be aware of. First of all, understand that adolescence is a time of rapid growth and development. And while many children grow and develop at different rates, there are certain stages that every child goes through. And before you know it, you'll be dealing with a full-on teenager. So, how do you navigate the adolescent years? First of all, recognize that the child that you're dealing with is still your baby, but the changes that are happening may make them almost unrecognizable to you. Their bodies are changing, their brains are changing, the way that they learn is changing, their relationships are changing, and even their personalities are changing. Welcome to Raising an Adolescent, a time of eye-rolling, emotional outbursts, and thoughts of running away. And that's just the adults. Parenting an adolescent can be tough. You never know what you're going to get from day to day. But if you remember the love and care and respect that you've built your relationship with your child on, you will find that parenting an adolescent can be a fun adventure. And remember, no matter what kinds of changes your child is going through, they still need you. In fact, they need you now more than ever. Physical development. As children go through adolescence, their bodies start becoming the adults that they will eventually be. So kids get taller, they build muscle mass, and it happens in spurts. You may notice that they sleep more, they eat more, and they might be a little more grouchy while all of that growing is taking place. They're awkward because the muscle development is uneven. Sometimes they're ungangly and uncoordinated. They're hormonal. As puberty begins, waves of hormones will be washing through your child's body. Understand that. That may translate into mood swings and other difficulties. And as we said, they will be ravenous. Their metabolism fluctuates and it can result in big appetites and really strange tastes. Your child may experience a growth spurt, but height varies from child to child. And remember that children grow at different rates. However, children can sometimes be aware of the fact that their friends are taller or shorter than they are. So help your child to understand that everyone is different. This is a little exaggerated, but I think you'll find your child will understand that's what it feels like. Puberty starts during the middle school years and makes children often very self-conscious. Girls will begin to develop breasts. Their bodies will become more womanly as their hips may widen, and they will also experience the onset of menstruation. Boys, too, will go through puberty, although they may start a little later than the girls in their class. And they will have to deal with things like involuntary erections and the changing of their genitals. Help them to understand that these changes are natural and part of the process of growing up. As a parent, you can help your child to understand and anticipate those changes by letting them know what to expect. You can put them in contact with reliable and helpful resources like books or websites, and allow them to ask questions. But remember, some of their questions may appear to be naive or even a little silly, but avoid belittling or laughing at them when they ask those questions. Cognitive development starts to change. Middle school students are able to think abstractly so that they can understand metaphor. They begin to see cause and effect, and so they can start to see how their behavior may impact events or how events are related. They're able to reason effectively, and they can start to project into the future to anticipate and formulate goals. Middle school kids are notorious for being rebellious and pushing the limits. They may act like they want you out of their life, because their job is to challenge authority figures, to test the limits of acceptable behavior, and sometimes to be a little insensitive. Peer relationships are extremely important during these years, and oftentimes there may be a push or pull between the loyalty to the peer group and the loyalty to their family unit. Remember, you've taught your child how to approach the world, and sometimes they may come into contact with ideas that are conflicting to that. But maintain a steadfast foundation that your child can rely on, and they'll come back to you. Also remember that even though they may express the need for you to get out of their lives as they're exerting their independence, they also still want to be loved. As we mentioned, teenagers are strongly dependent upon their parental value. They look to you to provide that upbringing, and they really want to feel loved by the significant adults, teachers, parents, grandparents. That level of acceptance is very important, especially because during these awkward middle school years, they may feel self-conscious or alienated. And middle school kids need frequent affirmation. So give them plenty of opportunities, or take plenty of opportunities to tell them how great you think they are. Encourage your child to participate in family decision-making and give them the opportunity to use those growing reasoning and cognitive skills. Encourage your child to test out new ideas in conversation, but listen to them and offer your own views as plainly and honestly as possible. They're going to be testing out a lot of approaches and a lot of what feels like different personalities during these years. Give them the opportunity to do that with love and limits. Peer relations and moral development become extremely important during these years. Middle school students are idealistic and have very strong ideas about how they think the world should be. They start to become more introspective and analytical about their thoughts and their feelings. They're able to reflect on how they feel and why they feel that way. They're very concerned about ethical and moral issues, although many times those are issues that they're not prepared to cope with and often will need adult guidance to help them to grapple with those issues. And they need guidance. Middle school children are not very good at figuring out what is a positive influence and what is a negative influence. And oftentimes they will follow any influence in front of them. So they need your guidance to help them to figure out what is a good influence and what is not. Peers become the model for behavior during this time period. So your child will become extremely, extremely fixated and dependent upon their friends. There's a fierce loyalty to the in-group, but that can often result in your child being cruel to people who are not in their group. Cyberbullying and in-person bullying becomes a big issue during this time because of this phenomenon. And your child becomes extremely self-conscious, which will make them very vulnerable to criticism from their peers. So help them to understand that at their core, they're okay. And to navigate that possible criticism. Continue to maintain your family traditions and closeness. Although it may seem that your child isn't much interested in the things that are going on at home and would rather be out with their friends, keep those traditions in place so that they have something to return to. Help your child to build peer relationships with participation in activities of their choice, not necessarily of your choice. And get to know your child's friends, and if possible, their families too. The more connections you can have with this growing peer group, the better it will be for your child. Supporting your child's learning. Help them to structure their time. They need help with organization, and help them to establish deadlines, routines, and timelines. Executive function is not a strength for the majority of middle school students, and parents can help them by building the skills to allow them to do that kind of thinking. Ask your child what he or she is learning in class, and help them to connect what they're learning in school to the real world. Relevance becomes extremely important to middle school students. And think about the future. At this point, your child is able to start projecting into the future what kind of life they would like to be and what kind of career they would like. Give them opportunities to explore those connections, and also Help them to understand how what they're learning in school now will relate to where they want to go in the future. Literacy is extremely important to middle school students, and often students love trilogies and series and books about fiction, science fiction, fantasy, sports, history, and romance. They also start to become interested in current events and the world around them, so a newspaper subscription is very helpful for students at this age. You can support that natural curiosity by exposing your child to plenty of opportunities to read text, like books, newspapers, and magazines. When your children want to talk, one thing that you can do is give them your undivided attention. Don't play on your phone, don't do other things, just sit and listen. When your child is trying to bring up an issue that you may not necessarily agree with, try to listen calmly and focus on trying to understand your child's point of view. And even though you're probably going to get a fair bit of attitude from your child, model good behavior by speaking to your children as calmly and courteously as you would a stranger. It won't always be easy. Remember that your child is desperately seeking your approval, so make an effort to commend them frequently and appropriately. Often, it's easy to focus on the bad stuff, the things that are not what we would like them to be. But please take a moment to acknowledge where your child is doing things right and how they make you happy, because everyone needs to feel appreciated. And keep your sense of humor. Adolescents are a bundle of contradictions. At the same time that they are wanting to be independent and challenging everything, they are still desperate for your approval and affection. So remember that you're helping your child to become the adult that he or she will eventually be. Keep your sense of humor. Remember that you love your child, and hang on and enjoy the ride. If you'd like to know more, here are some websites that you may consult. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychology has very helpful facts for families, as well as the American Psychological Association and the Centers for Disease Control. All of these may sound like boring resources, but they come with a host of really helpful information on how to parent a middle school student.